Um, I think I'll have to give a few words of just introduction, just to get everyone back into the issues at hand. We have a mitzvah of Kiddushin, and the Rambam mentions three types of Kiddushin, and he quotes the various psukim for them. Clearly says that the one that's min Torah is kinyan bia, and he quotes a pasuk ki yikach ish ishu bala. We pointed out that probably a better translation, shetzivonu bikidushin, or a kinyan ishus, and that borrowing the mitzvah kotzer of little bikidushin is not clear what you gain by it, because we don't even know what little bikidushin is, which I'll try to explain soon. And also, the Rambam over there in the Minyan HaKotzer quotes a different pasuk. He quotes the pasuk ki yikach ish isha uboy leo sneya. We pointed out that the Rambam seems to grappling with which pasuk to quote in the Pirush Mishnayos, Madur Kam, Madur Basra. We pointed out that clearly in Mishnah Torah and certainly the Protei Mitzvas, the Rambam seems to combine the Mitzvah Kiddushin together with the Nisuin. Here in Sefer Mitzvos, there's no recollection of that. So I suggested that the Rambam Mishnah Torah is quoting the pasuk of Boy Leho, and somehow it's ki yikach ish isha Boy Leho, that the kicha precedes the Boy Leho and the ishus. And there he's trying to say that there's a relationship between Kiddushin and Nisuin, and the Kiddushin should be prior to Nisuin, or in the Protei Mitzvah it's clear that it's a two-part mitzvah. We pointed out the Ramban also goes like that as a two-part mitzvah. I think I probably pointed out also a Tashbetz that seems to say that the two parts of the mitzvah. So now, once we have that, and that the posik, the Ram's using, at least in the in Mishnah Torah, probably not in the Pirush Mishnayos, that a boy leho is after the Kiddushin and is Nisuin, and the Rambam in the Minyan HaKotzer, Minyan Mitzvah Kotzer says, livo b'Kiddushin, Shenema ki ish isha or boy leho. So maybe livo b'Kiddushin has a completely different meaning. Livo, that the bias ishus should be with Kiddushin. And really what he's referring to is the Ram already made the change that he has in the Protei Mitzvos. Excuse me, that the change that he has in the Protei Mitzvos and in Mishnah Torah, he already has in Minyan HaKotzer. And that's why he changed the pasuk the same way he quotes the pasuk in Mishnah Torah. So then, it's an amazing mistake to take the Ram's translation and quote, it's like cutting and pasting, and quoting his, the way he phrases the mitzvah Kiddushin, the livable Kiddushin, and apply it to Minyan HaMitzvos. Because l'chayra, he's working in a different frame of reference. In Minyan HaMitzvos HaKotzer, he's working with the frame of reference in Mishnah Torah, and in Minyan HaMitzvos proper, he's working more so with the framework of the Pirush Mishnayos that these psukim are referring to. That even certainly Madur Kamo, that Uboilel is referring to Kedushin, not to Kedushin plus Nisun. Okay, that was the first point which I wanted to add, just to clear the air about this. So that's why I was I did the unthinkable of changing the girsa in the translation here in Minyan HaMitzvos, not to live up Kedushin, which also doesn't make any sense. V'lo says Dovo biyad ha'isha, but it's Tzivona b'Kedushin, and then a colon and three options: Kedusha Kesef, Kedusha Shtar, and Kedusha Biyad. So that's what I would suggest. I think everything reads very nicely. I think, I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week, that in Mishnah Torah, I could assume that if a person does Kiddushin with the clear intent that he doesn't want to move further, I'm not sure at all that there's a mitzvah there. Whereas you could imagine here in Minyan HaMitzvos that there might be a mitzvah. And Tashbates clearly says, like this, in Chelik Bey, Siman Ayin Dalet, Ava mitzvahs Kiddushin, Eino mitzvah omedes ba'atzmo, doesn't stand by itself, and mitzat shi materes ha'isha leba'alo, acha she'asa bo ma'isa acher, v'hu ma'isa nisun. She'ilu kiddush, amana shelo lichnois, ein kan mitzvah klal. There, or maskil b'chas elsin, also he says that's why he mentioned chuppah, because that's part of the mitzvah. Al di chup b'kedushin, loyma she'elsin eino elo mipnei zeh, umipnei zeh ein ono mevochin lekadish eso isha. Okay. I'm only wondering whether in Minyan HaMitzvos, whether you can also say that the relationship with the Kedusha and Nisuin, and even though in the text of the Rambam over here, there's no mention of it at all, I was only wondering from the Seder of the mitzvahs that he quoting a mitzvah puruvu and then a mitzvah kiddushin, that assuming that puruvu, where you would want something more than kiddushin. So that's my only suffix over here. Now, then he says, Ram continues, so we have three types, three ways of making Kedushin. One should ask themselves, I think I asked it last week, why is Ram getting involved in this? I would assume that's Prate Mitzvahs. It's not, it says, how you make the kinyanishus? The Ram gives a reference at the end of the mitzvah that the isbar makom is b'ksuvas kedushim v'nida. The Rambam, let's see again. Let's go. Voremes olov. So I would assume that Kapach's Girsa is better over here. I'm not much interested Voremes over here, and whether the but which Kapach, excuse me, I'm more so interested not in what the word, whether the proper translation is remes, but Ibn Tibet says olov, and the proper thing should be oleho, and he's referring back to the Mitzvas Kiddushin. And it's the Voremes olov, or the Hora olov, or whatever you want to translate it, is this pasuk, Yishu Bolel. And then he says, Heire, and that could be Heire or Kapach translate Mashma, Shukaine Bibi'ila. Then he says, V'omar, v'yotze v'hoyso, ki kamo shayitzia b'shtar, kein havaya b'shtar. So l'chayr is the hekish in the Gemara Kedushin, Daf Hem and Aleph, of there's a hekish in v'yotze v'hoyso. That the same way yitzia is b'shtar, Kedushin is also b'shtar. Then, ukmo kein lamadnu, shehi niknis bekesef, me omroi, be omroi vria, ein kesef laodun zeh, aber yesh kesef laodun acher, umonu av. So the Av receives Kesef through Kiddushin. So it means that when he's Mekadesh his daughter. So then it means that Kesef is another way to make Kiddushin. So L'cheira, the Rambam is quoting the pasuk. You see, it's a little strange. Normally, the Rambam says "Zu Mitzvas Kiddushin," so he's quoting the pasuk "Kikach ish isha ubala" and "Hoira sheyikne bebir bebiila." So then, this pasuk is not only the pasuk for Kiddushin, the Mitzvah Kiddushin, but also the pasuk for beer. So then, at a simple level, the Rambam is necessary to say that the only Kiddushin D'Oraisa is beer, because this is the pasuk. And then he says, there are other two ways of doing it, and he quotes the psukim. We don't understand there's any rhyme and reason to that, but clearly, even over here, the setup is that the Mitzvah Kiddushin is with beer. The Rambam, in fact, in Chubas Rambam, in Shimon, in Simon, Shin Nun Hey, The Rambam says, Habi'ilo vadai min hatera. Shahare lo lomduha b'mida misholish esrei midas. Ella ubo'alo malame sheniknes b'biyah. This is the same thing in the Pirush HaMishnayos, that only biyah is deraisa. Both in Madua Kam and Madua Basra. En Kiddushin in one of them, he writes, Madua Basra, En Kiddushin Yosim Bo'orim Me'ela. V'zeh hu nishparish b'Torah. Shenemo ubo eleho bo'olo. B'biyah nasis bulas baal. In Madua Kam and En Kiddushin Yosef Chamurin, whatever that means, Me'ela. V'zeh anikor Kiddushin deraisa. So now, that's what he says here. Ava kedushin deraisa only mevurim shehein biyah, and that's pshuta shel mikra. Now he says, "Kvo she's boy b'makoymos miksuvos." I'm not sure exactly what he means there, unless he means, depending what girsa does he mean? He means the kesef is the Rabbon, if he has that girsa. What does it mean, ksuvos? And it's important to see a tshuva bikas Avrom that seems to have the girsa in the Gemara, that the Gemara ksuvos is denying that kesef, at least that's the way he learns it. Kiddushin is the Gemara Kiddushin Testament base would be a Manola, number of Yechon, the Yomakor, Bulas Baal. You can look at the Gemara. In Nida, he writes in the Pirush Mishnayis, Perek Vav Mishnayis Beis, Bama Devur Mamurim B'Shaloi Bo'alo Ba'alo Acha Shtemes Reishon V'Yom Echad Avol Im Bo'alo B'Zman Zeh the Kedusha Miyun V'Na'asis Mukudeshes B'Biyah Deraisa Ein Yichol L'Mayim. Again, Biyah is Deraisa. This is amazing, this Pirush Mishnayos. Are you prepared to say that if you Mekadesh Bishtar or Bekesef, we'll see that you can be Mamayim? Because the only Kedusha D'Rabbanan. Is anyone prepared to say that there shouldn't be chenek in boileish ish shemiskadeshes b'kedusha kesef or shtar? See, I assumed that no one was ready to accept such a thing, and it's only a question what the mitzvah is. Whether the pasuk is mafurish b'Torah or not. But on the other hand, the lashon of the Pirush Mishnah in Nida is amazing, because he's talking about a Kanyi Mamayin, a Yisrael who got married, Tana, and after 12, Avolim Bo'alo Bizman zeh v'nasis mekudesh v'biyah deraisa any chol l'mayim. And mashma that before then you can, which is amazing. But just this lashon in Pirush Mishnayos and Nida is interesting. Then the Rambam continues. Ukfa hisboyer hisboaru mishpatei mitzvah zo b'shleimus b'mesechta mechuberes lo v'tzaloima meseches kedushin v'beya omu kedushin b'biyah shehem deraisa hine kfa hisboyer shemitzvahs kedushin deraisa. Question is where this is. We have to know. Now, so what do we have over here? In Pirush HaMishnayos, and also in Minyan HaMitzvos, the only Kedusha Deraisa is Kedusha Biyah. Kedusha Shtar and Kedusha Kesef for the Rabbanon. But in Mishnah Torah, the Rambam is of the opinion that not only Kedusha Biyah is a Deraisa, but Kedusha Shtar is also Deraisa. And only Kedusha Kesef is Divrei Sefer. Now, I'm going to read the Rambam in Mishnah Torah in Perek Gimel Achachav, and this is Madua Kama. And the Tshuvas Rambam Shin Nun Hey is a reference to the Madua Kama. And it reads like this. HaMekadish b'biyah, Hari Elu Kedushay Torah. V'chein b'shtam nish kadeshes boy min ha'Torah kishem shegoyme u'megaresh shenema v'kosav lo sefer krisis kach goyme u'machnis aval ha'kesef midivrei seifrim shenema kikach ish isha v'omu chachamim l'kuchin elu yiyu b'kesef shenema v'nasati kesef asod kach many different passages. The Birkas Avram says that the Rambam over here is that Kesef the Sefer is referring to the Gemara Ksubas. Call the Mekadesh Adait the Rabbanon Mekadesh Vafkinu Rabbanon the Kedusha Minei. Omer Ravinu Ravashi Teinech Kodesh Bekasba. And he learns that this is Dafka Bekesef and not B'shtar. What I'd like to do is read the Tshuvas Rambam. It's Shun and Hey, the Pinchas Adayan. I'm just going to read from the middle of it. I think it's an important part. The v'chein yesh lish'ol b'vadai v'loima li habi'ilu vadei min ha'Torah shari lo yilomduho b'mida misholosh esrei midas elo u'ba'alo melamed shebiktas l'biyah elo ha'kesef ha'shtar behekesh lomdu. I think the word behekesh over here is probably translation from the Arabic. It means through rational tools that you can, analytical tools to derive things. It means Yud Gimel Midas. Lomdu Eisan. Lama Amrit. Shashta min ha'Torah. Loma Amrit. Why do you say in Mishnah Torah, and he's referring to Madua Kama, that that shtar is min ha'Torah and kesem devreim. They should be the same. Vatshuva, and the Ram doesn't quote the Gemara Ksuvas, as the biggest Avam is suggesting. Vatshuva al zeh, shevad dekacho yisiyome, shakesef vashtar midivreim. Choyu minadin bo. Minadin means Yud Gimel Midis. Lule, hod the amina behedye bin in nam rosa, the amina nam rosa, the Omer Achmona beskila echi mishkachas lo. The Torah says now rosa is beskila. Pirish, miroma kor nara besula rosa. What's the pasuk talking about? How can you have a nam rosa? Shma miro bavadai sheish rosa min atera b'loy bia in pshuta shel mikra. Ubama b'shokol v'tol hamemro Omer Rav Nachum bar Yitzchok brave mishkachas lo kagoin shekitsha b'shtar chol v'gomo moitzi goimo machnes shma mino shedive akol hashtar goimo machnes ve'al zeh samachti uposakti shashtar min atera. And that's pshat in the pasuk. It doesn't mean in a chayiv visa. It just is minatera. Now, this we're going to have to take slowly because a lot going on. First of all, there's a question which you have to ask. How does the Gemara prove it? The Gemara proves it like this. The Gemara says, "Matko Baba Momo in Kenam Roslo Machmono Hechi Mishkachas Lo Idi Aktish V'Hod the Boil Buuli Idi Aktish." If he was Mekadosh with beer, V'Loi Bo Lav Kumu, because the only kedushin is beer. Amur Abonon Kamei Derabaye Mishkachas Agon Shebol Oleh Orus Shaloi Kedalko. The way he was Mekadosh with beer was a beer Shaloi Kedalko. Omele Abaye Atal Mupli Rebbe Rabbonon El Ba'acher, that with the beer Kedalko or Shaloi Kedalko, beer Shaloi Kedalko makes a bula. But Avobar, if it's Kedusha beer, she certainly called the bula. Tiviakol in Boalel Shaloi Kedalko also bula. Mahi, the sign he calls Rebbe in the Rabbonon, whatever. So the Gemara's conclusion that it's Pshuta Shel Mikra, that the Kedusha Shtar, is based on the fact that a beer Shaloi Kedalko by Baal makes her a bula. So she wouldn't be an Amarasa. So I would assume then, even though the Ram Mishnah Torah doesn't quote the beer Shaloi Kedalko makes a bula, that he would have to subscribe to this. Now the Gemara goes further. It says, Omar Nachum bar Yitzchok, Mishkachas lo kagoyin shekitsha b'shtar, choil v'goyma u'moitzi, goyma u'machnes. What is he talking about? Choil v'goyma u'moitzi, goyma u'machnes. So there are achronim that interpret that the Gemara Rav Nachman is basically explaining the hekish of a yekish v'yotzav ha'yisa. Is that the pshat the Gemara according to the Rambam? How could the Gemara prove that the kedusha, the other kedusha derises with beer and not with kesef by quoting a hekish? For the same money, you could say that there's a kicha gicha mistayefon, whatever one of your gimel midas you want to use. How could that be the proof? How could that be what the Gemara is saying? And also, I'd like to point out the Rambam in Perich Gimel Milchus Ishus Halacha Chof again. Hamakadosh b'bir. Hari elu kedushay Torah. V'chein b'shtar miskadeshes bo min haTorah. And what's the proof? Keshem shegoyme u'megaresh shenema v'kosav lo sefer krisis kach goyme u'machnes. Do you see in these words, Keshem shegoyme u'megaresh shenema v'kosav lo sefer krisis kach goyme u'machnes? That he's referring to the hekesh of v'yotzav ha'isa. And l'cheira, you'd want, I mean, I mentioned this before, l'cheira, you'd want, the Nachma Yitzchak is saying the proof, or is explaining why we should interpret that it's Kedusha Shtar and not Kedusha Bia. So what I would suggest to you is that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is of the opinion that if you have in front of you a limud to a kinyan mekrumemka, and on the other hand, you have in front of you a kinyan of ishus, and you have a choice between the two, one should pick the kinyan ishus as being the raisa for kedushin, and not the kinyan of mekrumemka. And then he's saying a lot, Kishem shegoymu megaresh, you have a kinyan ishus of shtar, shenem of a kosav lo sefer krisis, that then you should pick the kinyan of shtar as a kinyan ishus. But kesef is only b'divrei because the limud is from stay Ephraim, the sati kesef l'ksol l'kol, and that is a kiddushe, that's a ki mechomemka. And there's no hechach, you should say, that applies. In other words, if you have a choice between the two, you should pick. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is a svara why you should pick shtar over beer. And then the Gemara makes a lot of sense. And that's the Ram's doing. Keshem shegoymo megaresh shenever kosel l'sefer krisus kach goymo machnes. Our kesef need to be safe because it's learned from the sati kesef asol kachmi many. It's not a kinyan ishus. So then you're going to have to reinterpret the pasuk. What happens now? Ki yikach ish isha u'ba'alo, and we learned that that's kedusha bia. So you're going to have to say ki yikach ish isha with the kinyan of ishus, which is the shtar, u'ba'alo, then it's mevov mechalik. It's an amazing change because ki yikach ish isha u'ba'alo. That's how Nachman is coming, because the pasuk says after that it's kedushin. So l'chayra, unless you have a different shot, I would assume that ki yikach ish isha is referring to shtar. Now, next. Now, the question you're going to have to ask yourself now, that this I think is the simple part. Why is the Rambam getting involved in all this? It's Protei Mitzvahs. So I suggested, I'm not excited about it, that because the Rambam wants to bring a pasuk for the Mitzvah Kiddushin, and that pasuk happens to be Obala. So then he's saying that the Kedusha D'Oraisa be and the others are not. On the other hand, if you accept that, the introduction of the Rambam is very odd. Because the Rambam goes like this. He says, he Zivona Begedushin, colon, and the three options, Lo says Dovo, Biara Isha, or Bishtar, or Bia, Vizui Mitzvah Kedushin. So if I had been the Rambam and I wanted to make the point that the Kedusha D'Oraisa is Bibia, I would have written it like this. He should Tivona Begedushin and cross out Velocities Dover Biyad over Bia. That's all crossed out. Vizui Mitzvah Kedushin. Shetivona B'Kedushin, which is the mitzvah, something like that. Or even leave out the Zui Mitzvah Kedushin. For Remez Oloch, Amroi Ki Yikach Ish Isha. Uba. Ubala. Heire Shi Hu Yikne Bebila. Isn't it a little bit odd if you want to make a case that the Kedusha B is the Raisa and everything else is not, to have in the heading of the mitzvah that the mitzvah and quote Kesef first, what says Dover Biyada Isha or Bishtar would be? It's a little bit odd. The question is, what's the Rambam involved with? Why is the Rambam getting involved in this? So I have a suggestion. Yes. I want to introduce to you Rav Sadigan. Rav Sadigan does an amazing thing. When you count in Minyan HaMitzvos, the Mitzvah Kiddushin, how many mitzvahs do you have? So everyone would say one. Comes Rav Sadigan and says that there are three mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of Kedusha Kesef, there's a mitzvah of Kedusha Shtar, and the mitzvah of Kedusha Bir. Three mitzvahs in Minyan HaMitzvos. And if you don't believe me, I'll read it to you. HaPerek Asiri, it's found on page 83, the 10th Perek of Sadigan. HaPerek Asiri, Mitzvos Hoishus, the mitzvahs which are about mitzvah ishus, women. Reishis Chivosov, Shoish Mekadesh Es Hoisha Bekesef Shtar Ubir. Okay, three ways. V'sholosh HaMitzvos Halolu Nilmadu Min HaKosuv B'Kabbalah Ka'imrei Yikach Ish Isha V'Kitza HaKosuv. And an amazing thing, three mitzvahs, the Torah is Mekatza, but you know the three mitzvahs in Minyan HaMitzvos. So here, first of all, what's happening is is the first argument of the Rambam against Rav Sadi Goin is Shiur Shvi'i. The same way Rav Sadi Goin counts Korban, Oila, V'yored, 3 mitzvahs, Ashiris, Dalas, and Dali Dalas, because the Shiur Shvi'i says that if you have 3 ways of doing a mitzvah, it's all counted as 1. Rav Sadi Goin says you count it as 3. So you have 3 ways of doing Kedushin. Comes Rav Sadi Goin and counts it as 3. And comes the Rambam and says, no. It's only 1 mitzvah, because these 3 are 3 expressions of the same thing, of Kedusha Isha. Now, the Rambam, I assume, could attack Rav Sadi Goin from a different point of view. Even if you accept that the Rambam is incorrect in Shiur Shvi'i, but Hanicha, if the 3 options are all in the Torah, like Korban Oila V'yored, Ashiros, Dalas, and Dali Dalas. But if the 3 options, only one of the options in the Torah, and the other 2 are nilmadu, mimida shatei nidreshes behen, counting them as 3 mitzvahs is again Shiur Beis. And that's the Rambam stresses that it's, and that's the Rambam in the tshuva, that it's only midas shatei nidreshes behen. Maybe Rav Sadi Goin is coming back and saying that it's b'Kabbalah. Maybe that's enough. And then the only argument the Rambam has against Rav Sadi Goin is Shiur Shvi'i. Now, in Mishnah Torah, he would have a much more difficult argument, because the 2 of them are in Torah Shebiksav, Shtar and Bia. But again, it's against Shiur Shvi'i. Now, the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus, in Perek Gimel Achachof, has a different girsa in Madura Basra. He changed the text. Makash Rebia, Harielu Kedushay Torah, V'chein b'shtar miskadeshes boi min ha-Torah, Kshem shegoymo magaresh, Shnem v'kosav lo say, V'krisis ka goymo machnes. V'chein din ha-kesef, din Torah, u'pirushim midivri Sefer. Shenema kikach ish isha, v'omar, v'omu chachomim, v'kuchin elu, Yiyu b'kesef. Shnem masati kesef sadakach. So I thought that the Rambam felt clearly that there's no nafkamina halacha, because you certainly chayiv chenek, even you boil with kedusha kesef, and was interested in people that will come and say that it's only the Rabbanan. Maybe there's no chiyuv chenek. So the Rambam says that it's also min ha-Torah. This, however, you can go further. If you recall, I mentioned to you in Daniel Abavli And Piskurov, I pointed out in Uchos Machos Asuris, you cannot, the Rambam in Sherish Beis is you cannot create a mitzvah based on your Gimel Midas. But if you have a mitzvah, which is based on Torah Shebiksav, you can extend and expand the mitzvah even through Midas HaTorah. So therefore, once you have Kiddushay Bia as Mefurish B'Kra, the mitzvah certainly includes Shtar and Kesef. However, when you're talking about what's Pshat and Torah Shebiksav and learning through Na'amarasa, how do you learn the Pshat? So you'd have to have a proof that Kedusha Shtar is Minatera. But there's no issue. And that's what Ram says. The Kedusha Kesef is Minatera. But Piyusha Midivei Sefer, as opposed to the other two. So then, going back to what he does over here in Minyan HaMitzvos, there's also no problem. He should see Vonu, Bekedushin, V'lo says Dova B'yada Isha, or B'shtar or B'yah, because all three of them are Midaraisa. Once we can suggest and prove that Kedushay B'yah is Mefurish B'Kra, then through the Yud Gimel Midas, we can expand the mitzvah to include all three of them. And that's maybe what he's doing over here. The Rav once mentioned to us from his father, Moshe Levi Soloveitchik, that what's the meaning of Minatera Upiyusha Midivei Sefer? So he said there could be a nafkamin and Zokim Mamre, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Because the Gemara in Hedron, in Peizayin or Aleph, Tono Abonon, Zokim Mamre Eno Chayiv, El Adovo, Shes Doina Kores, Shigos Echatos, Dibri Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer Al Dovo Sheiku Midivei Sefer Teira Upiyusha Midivei Sefer. That's it, and that's the Rambam in the Madura Basra. Rabbi Shimon Oimer Afilu Diktuk Echo Midikei Sefer. But this won't help us because the Rambam Paskins we passing like a mayor. As the Rambam in Hilchos Mamre Perek Gimel Alocha Hey and Perek Dal Alocha Aleph and Beis. So, again, I would like to say that it's a double portion. The Kedusha Kesef is a Chiyuv Chenek. The only question is how we're canning the mitzvah and how we're canning how we're canning Torah Shebiksav in the tshuva. But after everything's said and done, even if it's the nerve from Yud Gimel Midas, it becomes part of the mitzvah. And it's certainly Chenek. However, I have a problem how to interpret this Pirush Mishnayis in neither Perek Vav Mishnayis Beis that the Kedushay Miyun are converted to Kedushay Deraisa, and you can't be Mamayan only because of Biyah. That's very good. And maybe the Ram changed his mind. Now, just as far as the mitzvah is concerned, the Poshet Lashon Rambam in Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph and Beis, Kivish in the Torah and Nitztabel Yisrael, She'im Yirtze Ish Lisa Isha Yiknoisa Betchila B'fnei Edom. That Ki'ilu that it's not a chiyuv, but if he wants to get married, this is the way. Even shenitne Torah, nitztavu Yisrael, shim yirtze, litze isha yikne oisa tchil. However, even though there's no hechach in chiyuv, I would tell you certainly there's a kiyum mitzvah, and therefore there's a bracha. Kiddushin is not a shrana that it's only a hurrah in the Torah, like the mitzvah of Aforos Nedorim, Tzadihei, or the mitzvah of the tomb, it's only a hurrah. Here, there's a kiyum, and there's a bracha. But there's no hechach. And the Rambam, they're quoting it at the end, the siyum mitzvahs aseh, with the mitzvahs which are hechach, the shishi mitzvahs, he means hechach. He really clearly says that these are the things that people normally do in normal day life. They eat, they get married, but it doesn't mean that there's a chiyuv. This mitzvah also is only on men, not on women. The Ram clearly says that also in the siyum mitzvah aseh. Now, that concludes my discussion of mitzvah kiddushin. Mitzvah reish yud daled. Let's start at least. HaMitzvah arba esrei umosayim hi shetzivonu lesyached choson lesyached let's say like this. In Kapach, it's not, no, it says, L'siachet choson im ishtoi shona tmimo. It's basically, the literal translation seems to be, they should be locked up together. L'siachet im ishtoi shona tmimo. Kapach says that the choson should be dedicated to his wife. She siachet hechoson le'ishtoi shonet shlema, which is a much better translation, I think. The mitzvah is on the choson liyached es atzmo le'ishtoi shonet shlema v'lesasek b'dvorim acherim. We'll see. He gives you a list of things you shouldn't do, the chassid shouldn't do. Shelo yisa michutz li'ir. In Kapach, shelo yelech bo lemasos, not go on an expedition, I guess, of Masos, long trips. This is exactly what it means. Then he says, in Kapach, the translation, a conquering army. But for defensive army would be different. Because defensive army is Mechemes Mitzvah, as the Ram says in Hilchos Perkei of Hilchos Melachim. It's also a very strange translation. Kapach translates whatever he's part from everything, his job is to be focused on his wife. certainly a very good formula for Shalom Bayis. And I guess the Torah wants to continue like that after the year. But then he says another sentence, and we'll pick this up a little bit more. Avo yismach imo ad mlois shona miyoim bo eleho. You count the year, we're talking about this chassan is he's married to a Nesua. It's a Nesua. It's not only Erisin, Miyom Bo Eleho. Okay. Now the question is he supposed to be happy with her, or he is supposed to make her happy? And we'll pick this up also. I just want to get you the problems. The question is, V'simach is a pio. It means makes other happy. We'll have to see how the Rambam over here interprets it and look at the Minyan HaKotzer, and we'll see what's going on. V'u amor yis'ale noki yihye lebeis veisai shona achas v'simach es ishra shelokach. What will be involved over here is another parasha in the Torah. There's one parasha in Dvorim Chav Daled, Noki Lebeisa Shona Achas. But it is a parasha of Koyim Meshulch Muchomo, where we say, Mi Shuhu, that he was Lekeach. He was Ma'aris Isha V'Locha, or he was Lokeach Bayis V'Lechanochai, or he was Noiteach Kalmoi V'Lechiloi. Is there any relationship between this parasha of and the parasha talking about Meshulch Mochomo and the parasha of an Isha Nesua, or a person who takes a kerem and is machal, or a person who buys a house v'chinchai. And the question is whether the mitzvah has anything to do with bias and kerem. A priori, it had nothing to do, but the Mishnah in Sefer dash in this pasuk, Periches Mishnah Daled, it says, Noki ye lebeisai, shana achas, lebeisai ze beisai. Ye ze kalma. So is kalma being involved in the mitzvah? Minchas Chinuch discusses it. And then the question is, the Rambam in Protei Mitzvas in Mishnah Torah puts together both of the parashas, Ma'ares Ishtay, together with the mitzvah. Look in the Protei Mitzvahs and try to figure it out, and look at his words in Mishnah Torah proper. In Protei Mitzvahs, he says, it says, Lios ma'ares uboine binyan v'notea kerem smeichim b'kinyonim shona tmimo u'machzirin oisem v'nomachama. I can't go about explaining. This doesn't make any sense. The mitzvah is only by ma'ares uboine ma'ares. There's no mitzvah. There's the mitzvah. Those cases where there's a mitzvah is not machzir, they don't go to out b'chlal. And here he told him machzir oisem v'nomachama. Mitzvah Hashem will pick this up next week. Believe that.